I stood at my living room window, watching the last of the mourners drift toward their cars like leaves scattered by wind I didn't feel. The coffee in my hand had gone cold hours ago, but I couldn't remember when I'd last taken a sip. My son was dead. Daniel, my only child, gone at 35. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Mrs. Patterson from the church was hugging Vanessa at the gate, whispering something that made my daughter-in-law nod and dab at her eyes with a tissue. I'd seen that same gesture at least 40 times today, the delicate press of white fabric to the corner of each eye, never smudging her makeup, never actually catching tears. Performance art, I was beginning to realize. Then I saw him. A man in a leather jacket, tall and lean, standing just beyond the gate's shadow, where the afternoon sun couldn't quite reach him. Vanessa broke away from Mrs. Patterson mid-sentence and moved toward him with purpose. Not the shuffling, grief-heavy steps she'd used all day. This was different, urgent, almost eager. Their heads bent together, and even from this distance, their body language screamed intimacy. His hand brushed her arm. She leaned in close, her lips moving rapidly. Her expression, I could see it in profile, was animated, alert. Nothing about that interaction belonged at my son's funeral. I set down my cup and headed for the door. By the time I pushed through the small crowd on my porch and reached the gate, the man had vanished around the corner like smoke. Vanessa turned, and I watched it happen in real time. Her face transformed instantly. The animation drained away. Grief slid back into place like a mask she'd perfected through hours of practice. Vanessa? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Who was that? Tears materialized in her eyes. Actual tears, or a convincing simulation. Oh, Margaret, she reached for my hand. Just someone from the funeral home, confirming final arrangements. He wasn't wearing funeral home attire. A flash of something, irritation, anger, crossed her features before disappearing behind the grief mask. Mom, I'm exhausted. Can we not do this right now? I let it drop. 35 years as a forensic accountant had taught me when to push and when to observe, when to ask questions and when to simply watch, calculate, document. I watched her walk back inside, phone already in her hand before she'd cleared the doorway. The next 2 hours passed in that strange blur funerals create, casseroles and condolences and the constant low hum of other people's sympathy. But I kept noticing things, small things, the kind of details that made my fingers itch for a spreadsheet and a calculator. Vanessa's phone never left her hand. She'd type rapidly, her thumbs flying across the screen, then pause, read, delete whatever she'd written, type again, delete again. Her eyes would dart around the room, checking if anyone was watching. She never saw me watching from the kitchen doorway. Around 8 o'clock, the house finally emptied. The last sympathetic neighbor carried out the last empty casserole dish, and the door clicked shut with a finality that made my chest ache. Vanessa announced she was going upstairs to rest, her voice thick with exhaustion that actually sounded genuine. I heard her footsteps overhead, pacing. Then her muffled voice through the ceiling, animated, energetic, nothing like the broken widow she'd played all day. My phone rang. Victor Chen, Daniel's boss at Chen Architecture, a good man who'd given my son his first real break in the industry. Mrs. Hayes. His voice was tight, formal, not the warm tone I'd heard at the funeral just hours ago. I need to speak with you urgently. Victor, if this is about the funeral expenses, it's not about money. He cut me off. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. My office. Come alone. Something in his tone made my pulse quicken. I don't understand. Don't tell Vanessa you're meeting me. A pause. Please, Margaret. This is important. You need to see what I found. What did you find? Not over the phone. Tomorrow. Promise me. I promised. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my living room, phone still pressed to my ear like I could squeeze more information from it through sheer will. Questions multiplied in my mind like cells dividing, each one spawning 2 more, then 4, then 8. What could be so terrible that Victor couldn't tell me over the phone? Why couldn't Vanessa know about the meeting? What had he found? Sleep wouldn't come. Around midnight, I found myself in Daniel's old bedroom, now the guest room where Vanessa stored her endless shopping bags and shoe boxes. I sat on the bed where my son used to read comic books and build Lego spaceships, and I started remembering. 3 months ago, something had changed. After 6 years of polite distance, Vanessa had suddenly become kind. She'd started calling me Mom, with warmth in her voice, instead of that careful formality she'd always maintained. She'd ask about my health, my retirement, whether I'd updated my will recently. "Just want to make sure you're taken care of, hein?" she'd said, squeezing my hand across my kitchen table. "You're alone now, and I worry about you." It had felt genuine at the time. Now, in the darkness of this room, it felt like something else entirely. Then there was the insurance conversation I'd overheard. I'd been visiting for dinner. Vanessa had started inviting me more often, another new development, when I'd heard their voices rising behind the closed bedroom door. "We need security, honey." Vanessa's voice, persuasive and insistent. "What if something happens? Your mother's getting older. We need to think about the future." "I don't want to think about my mother dying, Van." Daniel's voice had been strained. "Tired. It's not morbid, it's practical. Life insurance isn't just for old people. Anything could happen. Car accidents, illness. Fine, whatever you want." Daniel always caved with Vanessa. That was their dynamic. She pushed, he yielded. She insisted, he agreed. I'd watched it happen for 6 years and told myself it wasn't my business, that every marriage had its own balance. But the arguments had started around then too, raised voices behind closed doors when I'd call. Daniel's face growing more haggard each time I saw him. His shoulders tight with stress he wouldn't talk about. The way he'd started saying, "I'm fine, Mom," a little too quickly, a little too defensively. The night before the accident, he'd called me. "Mom, can we talk? Something important." My heart had lifted. Finally he was going to tell me what was wrong. But then Vanessa's voice in the background. "Honey, we have plans, remember?" Daniel had sighed, and I'd heard everything he wasn't saying in that single exhale. "Tomorrow, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. Dawn light crept through the window, gray and cold. I hadn't moved from Daniel's old bed. My forensic accountant's notepad lay open on my lap, filled with observations, inconsistencies, questions, dates and dollar amounts and fragments of overheard conversations. My handwriting looked different, sharper, more focused. The shaky grief scrawl from the past week had disappeared. I checked my watch. 6 hours until the meeting with Victor. I walked to my desk and pulled out the accident report I'd requested from the police department. I'd barely glanced at it before, too consumed by loss to process technical details about hydraulic failure and impact velocity and time of death. Now I read with different eyes. Brake line failure, catastrophic. Total loss of braking function on Interstate 10 during morning rush hour. Vehicle struck concrete barrier at approximately 70 millimeters. Impact was instantaneous. Death occurred immediately. The clinical language couldn't hide what had happened. My son had been driving on the highway when his brakes stopped working. He'd had 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, to realize he was going to die, to pump the brake pedal and feel nothing, to see the concrete barrier rushing toward him and know there was no way to stop. I had to set the report down. Breathe. Force the image away. When I could read again, I flipped through the pages looking for the service history. There it was. 15 days before the accident, Daniel had taken his car to his regular shop, Steve's Automotive on East Indian School Road. Full service, new brake fluid, complete inspection. Everything passed with flying colors. I stared at that line until the words blurred. I'd spent 3 decades analyzing financial documents, tracing money through corporate labyrinths, finding the discrepancies that revealed fraud. I knew when numbers didn't add up. I knew when timelines didn't make sense. And brake lines don't deteriorate in 15 days. The thought arrived fully formed. delivered by years of professional training in identifying what didn't fit, what couldn't be coincidence, what pointed to intent. My hands were steady now, not the trembling hands of a grieving mother, but the steady hands of an investigator with a purpose. Upstairs, Vanessa's alarm went off. I heard her moving around, starting her morning routine. In a few hours, she'd come downstairs with her widow's face on, and I'd have to pretend I still believed it. But first, I needed to hear what Victor had discovered. I came downstairs at 7:30 to find Vanessa in the kitchen making breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh coffee. The domestic scene perfectly staged, like a photograph in a magazine about gracious living. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes were on her phone, lying face down beside the stove. "Good morning, Mom. You look tired. Did you sleep at all?" "Some." I poured coffee, keeping my movements casual. "I have some errands today. Banking. Paperwork." She glanced up, interested. "Oh? Anything I can help with?" "Just boring administrative things. Estate stuff. Should be back this afternoon." "Perfect." Her smile widened. "When you get back, we should talk about the house, finances, planning for the future." "Sure, this afternoon." She turned back to the eggs, humming softly. "I'll make your favorite dinner, pot roast." I took my coffee to the table, watching her reflection in the window over the sink. The moment she thought I wasn't looking, her face went blank, completely expressionless. She picked up her phone, typed something quickly, and smiled. A real smile this time. Nothing like the careful expression she wore for me. 20 minutes later, I backed out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing at the window, phone pressed to her ear, animated, laughing, not even a trace of grief. Chen Architecture occupied a modern glass building in Phoenix's business district, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces that caught the morning sun like a prism. Victor's assistant was waiting for me in the lobby. No pleasantries, just a swift escort to a conference room on the 3rd floor. Victor entered 30 seconds later, looking like he'd slept in his car. Dark circles under his eyes, his tie askew. He locked the door behind him. "Thank you for coming." He set his tablet on the table between us. "What I'm about to show you will be difficult." My throat was tight. "Just show me." He hesitated, his hand hovering over the tablet. "I should have brought this to you sooner. I kept hoping I was misreading the situation." "Victor, show me." He tapped the screen, and video footage appeared. Security camera, parking lot, timestamp from 8 days before Daniel's accident. My son paced beside his car, phone pressed to his ear. Even without audio, his fury was obvious. Jaw clenched, free hand gesturing sharply, cutting through air like he was physically fighting someone I couldn't see. Victor adjusted the volume, and Daniel's voice crackled through the speakers. "I told you no, Vanessa. I won't sell Mom's house. That's insanity." She raised me there. Silence. Vanessa's response was inaudible, but Daniel's face crumbled like paper in fire. "I don't care about the money. Family isn't for sale." He ended the call and sat in his car for 10 minutes, head in his hands. The footage showed my son crying in an empty parking lot, completely alone. Victor stopped the playback. "This was recorded 8 days before the accident." My throat had closed up. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Play it again," I managed. We watched it 3 more times. Each viewing revealed new details. The way Daniel's hand shook, how he kept looking at his phone, like he expected another call, another attack, the defeated slump of his shoulders when he finally drove away. Victor crossed to his desk and opened a safe built into the wall. He pulled out a manila envelope, worn at the edges like it had been handled many times. "Daniel left this with me 5 weeks ago." His voice was quiet. His instructions were specific. "Give it to you if anything happened to him, not to Vanessa, only to you." Inside were bank statements, transactions highlighted in yellow marker. $23,000, transferred in increments over 3 months from Daniel and Vanessa's joint account. The recipient, M. Rivera. There was also a handwritten note in Daniel's careful script, the same neat printing he'd used since elementary school. She claimed credit card debt. I checked. She doesn't have those cards. Where is this money going? Why is she lying? Beneath that, a life insurance policy, $500,000, dated 2 months ago. Daniel's signature looked wrong, the letters uneven, the pressure too light, like someone had made him sign it. He was worried, Victor said quietly. For weeks, he was distracted, stressed. He wanted to talk about family problems but kept putting it off. Then the day before the accident, he finally scheduled a meeting with me for that Monday morning. He said, Victor's voice caught. He said, "I need advice about protecting my mother." Those were his exact words. He never made it to that meeting. No, he didn't. I spread everything across the conference table. Bank statements, insurance policy, accident report. My forensic training kicked in. That methodical approach to evidence I'd used for 3 decades. Connect the data points, establish timeline, identify patterns. Daniel had his car fully serviced 15 days before the accident, I said, pointing to the service record in the police report. New brake fluid, complete inspection. Everything passed. Victor leaned over the documents. And brake lines don't deteriorate in 2 weeks. No. My voice was steady, cold. They don't fail catastrophically without cause. I tapped the accident report. Someone accessed that car after the service. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The words hung in the air between us. We both understood what I was saying. We both knew the implications. Victor handed me a USB drive. Everything's on here. Video, documents, copies of everything in that envelope. He pressed it into my palm, closing my fingers around it. Keep it safe. What are you going to do? He asked. I looked at the photos of my son, at the evidence of betrayal spread across the table, at the timeline that pointed to something I couldn't yet say out loud, but knew in my bones to be true. Find out exactly what happened. All of it. Every detail. And then I met his eyes. Make sure justice is served, one way or another. I didn't go straight home from Victor's office. Instead, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes. USB drive burning a hole in my pocket like evidence at a crime scene. $23,000 to Monsieur Rivera, a life insurance policy signed 2 months before my son's death. Security footage of Daniel begging Vanessa not to sell my house, the home where he'd grown up, where his father and I had raised him. The pieces were connecting, but I needed more. I needed to know who Monsieur Rivera was. I needed to understand the full scope of what Vanessa had planned, and most importantly, I needed to make sure I wasn't the next target. My phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa. "Where are you? We need to talk about the house and financial things. When will you be home?" I stared at those words. We need to talk about the house. The same house Daniel had refused to let her sell. The same house she'd been circling like a shark for 3 months. I didn't respond, not yet. Instead, I pulled out the notepad I'd been keeping since the funeral and started a new page. At the top, I wrote M. Rivera and underlined it 3 times. Then I drove to Steve's Automotive. The shop was exactly as Daniel had described it, a no-nonsense place that smelled like motor oil and honest work. The sound of impact wrenches and classic rock filled the air. A man in grease-stained coveralls looked up from under a hood when I walked in. "Help you?" "I'm looking for Steve. I'm Margaret Hayes." Daniel Hayes was my son. His face changed immediately. The professional mask dropped, replaced by genuine sorrow. "Mrs. Hayes, God, I'm so sorry. Daniel was a great customer. Always on time, never questioned the work. Just a really good guy." "Thank you." I steadied myself. "I need to ask about his last service." "The brake work." Something flickered in Steve's expression. Concern. Maybe confusion. "Let me pull up the records." He led me to a cluttered office and typed into an ancient computer that wheezed like it was on life support. "Here. Full brake system service. 15 days before the accident. I did the work myself. New pads, rotors, fluid flush. Those brakes were perfect when he left here." "Was that the last time you saw the car?" Steve scrolled through the screen, then stopped. His finger froze on the mouse. "Actually, No. My pulse quickened. His wife brought it in about a month before that service. Said it was for routine maintenance, but Daniel hadn't scheduled anything. I called him to confirm. He seemed confused, but told me to do whatever she wanted. What date was that? November 28th. I wrote it down. Did she come alone? Steve leaned back in his chair, thinking. No. Now that you mention it, she had someone with her. He stood abruptly. Hang on. We keep security footage for 90 days. Let me check. In the shop's tiny surveillance room, Steve rewound digital footage to November 28th. The image was grainy, but clear enough. Vanessa's silver sedan pulled into the lot. She emerged from the driver's side, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast day. From the passenger side came a man in mechanic's coveralls. Late 30s, confident walk, clearly comfortable in this environment. He moved like someone who knew his way around an auto shop. Who is that? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Steve leaned closer to the screen, then straightened abruptly. That's Marcus Rivera. Used to work here until I fired him 3 years ago. Rivera. M. Rivera. The $23,000 suddenly had a face. Why did you fire him? Steve's jaw tightened. Sloppy work, specifically with brake jobs. He'd cut corners, use substandard parts. I couldn't have that liability. He turned to me, and I watched understanding dawn in his eyes, like a sunrise revealing something terrible. Why is he with your daughter-in-law? That, I said quietly, is exactly what I need to find out. Steve printed screenshots from the footage without me asking, handed them over in a manila envelope like he was passing state secrets. Daniel was good people, Mrs. Hayes. If something happened to him that wasn't an accident, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I sat in my car outside the auto shop, staring at the screenshots. Marcus Rivera and Vanessa, standing beside Daniel's car, their heads bent together in conversation. A mechanic fired for sloppy brake work, a woman who'd pushed for a massive life insurance increase, $23,000 in unexplained transfers, and my son, dead from catastrophic brake failure 15 days after a perfect inspection. This wasn't grief anymore. This was a case, and I was going to build it brick by methodical brick until it was unbreakable. But I needed help, the kind of help the Phoenix Police Department wasn't providing. I opened my phone and searched. Private Investigators, Phoenix, Arizona. Sarah Chen met me at a coffee shop in Scottsdale, 20 miles from my neighborhood. Neutral territory. She arrived exactly on time. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, no wasted movement. The kind of person who noticed everything and revealed nothing. We sat in a corner booth away from the windows. You mentioned surveillance on your daughter-in-law. She pulled out a tablet, opened a notes app. What are we documenting? I'd rehearsed this in the car. I suspect she's having an affair. More than that, I believe she may have been involved in my son's death. I need documentation of her activities, her relationship with a man named Marcus Rivera. Sarah didn't flinch, didn't look shocked or skeptical, just nodded like I'd told her the weather forecast. Time frame? As long as it takes, but I need results within 2 weeks. $2,500 retainer. If she's meeting someone regularly, I'll have proof within a week. Her voice was matter-of-fact, professional. Photos, video if possible. Audio recordings where legal, daily text updates on activity. I pulled out my checkbook and wrote $2,500 without hesitation. My retirement savings were supposed to be for security and comfort. This was security. Sarah pocketed the check. Mrs. Hayes, if they're planning something, anything, they'll talk about it. People always think they're more careful than they actually are. The next 7 days were the longest of my life. At home, Vanessa escalated her campaign like a general sensing victory. She brought a real estate agent to just look at the house, got it appraised at $380,000, showed me listings for senior living communities with golf courses and weekly bingo nights. Look at this one, Mom. She'd sit beside me on the couch, laptop open, scrolling through photos of beige hallways and artificial smiles. They have a medical staff on site, activities every day. Wouldn't it be nice not to worry about maintenance? I played my part carefully. I suppose you're right about the upkeep. This place is getting to be a lot of work. Each small concession made her eyes brighten, made her lean in closer, sensing blood in the water. She was winning, or so she believed. Sarah's texts came daily, brief and professional. Day 1, subject observed. Meeting confirmed. Desert Rose Motel, Van Buren. Day 2, same location. 3, Chalwa PM, duration, 2 hours. Day 3, pattern established. Tuesdays and Thursdays, always room 12. On day 7, Sarah requested an in-person meeting. We returned to the same coffee shop. Sarah slid a thick envelope across the table, followed by a USB drive. Your instincts were correct, Mrs. Hayes. Her voice was quiet but firm. And it's worse than infidelity. The report documented 7 meetings between Vanessa and Marcus at the Desert Rose Motel. They arrived separately in different vehicles, left together. The pattern was consistent, deliberate, practiced. Then came the photographs. Vanessa and Marcus in the parking lot, his hand on her lower back. Vanessa laughing, completely relaxed. Nothing like the grief-stricken widow she played at home. Marcus leaning in to whisper something in her ear, her face lighting up with genuine joy. You got audio? My voice sounded hollow. Better than I expected. Parabolic microphone through the motel window. They thought they were secure. Sarah tapped the USB drive. Everything's on here, but Mrs. Hayes, you should prepare yourself. What they're discussing goes beyond an affair. I paid for the coffee with shaking hands and drove to the parking lot of the public library 3 blocks from my house. Sat with my laptop open, earbuds in, and clicked play. Static crackled, then Marcus's voice, rough and impatient. The cops found nothing. You're clear on that. Now you need to move on the old woman. My blood went cold. Vanessa's response was casual, almost amused. I'm working on it. She's starting to trust the idea of selling the house. Trust. Just get her to sign the deed over. Once you have the house and the insurance money, we're done with this place. Arizona in February is miserable anyway. Give me 2 more weeks. She's old, confused since Daniel died. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. I sat completely still in my car. Listening to my daughter-in-law call me the old woman, discuss me like I was an obstacle to remove rather than a person, a human being, Daniel's mother. She wasn't grieving, she was executing a plan, and that plan had included my son's death. The recording continued, Marcus asking about my will, Vanessa saying she was working on that too. Their laughter when Marcus suggested I might have an accident if I didn't cooperate. The laughter was the worst part, light and easy, like they were discussing weekend plans instead of potential murder. My hand shook, the only external sign of the rage burning through my chest like wildfire. But I didn't break, didn't scream or punch the dashboard. Instead, I thought, this is evidence. This is proof of conspiracy. This is what I need. I needed more than proof of their affair. I needed proof of murder, and I knew exactly where to find it. That afternoon, I drove to the law offices of Mitchell and Associates in downtown Phoenix. I'd researched Sandra Mitchell extensively, 15 years specializing in wrongful death cases, aggressive litigation, reputation for winning. The consultation cost $350, worth every penny. Sandra's office overlooked the city, all glass and chrome and understated power. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything. Victor's video, Daniel's envelope, the auto shop footage, Sarah's surveillance report and recordings. She reviewed each piece methodically, taking notes in neat handwriting that reminded me of my own case files from my accounting days. Finally, she looked up. Mrs. Hayes, you have strong circumstantial evidence of conspiracy to commit murder and ongoing conspiracy to defraud you. But Arizona courts require clear proof for wrongful death civil cases. What does that mean? It means we need more, either a criminal conviction, which seems unlikely given Detective Torres closed the case, or additional evidence showing premeditation and intent. She leaned forward. Specifically, we need them to explicitly admit involvement in Daniel's death. My stomach sank. The recordings show conspiracy to defraud me. Absolutely. They're discussing manipulation and theft, but they're not confessing to murder. They reference the police finding nothing, which could mean anything. Sandra's expression softened slightly. Here's the good news. They think they've succeeded. They're comfortable, making mistakes. If you give them enough rope, they might hang themselves. I understood immediately. I need to appear even more vulnerable. Exactly. Keep playing confused and overwhelmed. If she pushes harder, she'll reveal more. People get sloppy when they think they're winning. That evening, I returned home to find Vanessa waiting with dinner and wine. An expensive bottle of red I recognized as one Daniel had been saving for a special occasion. She was celebrating, privately, prematurely. I sat down, accepted a glass, and began my new performance. I've been thinking about what you said, about the house. I sipped the wine, let my shoulders slump. Maybe you're right. It is too much for me alone. Vanessa's entire posture changed. She leaned forward, attentive, supportive. Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. It really is for the best. I'll need help with the legal process, transferring property, all that paperwork. I rubbed my temples like the thought exhausted me. I don't understand half of it anymore. Of course, she could barely contain her satisfaction. I'll find you a good lawyer, someone who can handle everything smoothly. You won't have to worry about any of it. When should we start? No rush. Her hand covered mine on the table. But maybe we could begin looking at the paperwork next week, just to see what's involved. What she didn't know, every word was being recorded by the device Sarah had provided, hidden in my cardigan pocket. Small, professional grade, impossible to detect without a proper sweep. I nodded slowly, playing exhausted. All right, next week. After she went upstairs, triumphant and satisfied, I uploaded the recording to my secure cloud storage. Her eagerness to help me transfer the deed was documented, her barely concealed greed captured in digital clarity. But I still needed more. I needed the murder confession. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Subject and male companion meeting again tomorrow. 3:00 p.m. Same motel. Want audio? I typed back. Yes, everything. The next afternoon, while Vanessa thought I was at a doctor's appointment, I sat in the library parking lot with my laptop open. Sarah's live audio feed came through my earbuds in real time. Vanessa's voice. The insurance check still hasn't arrived. It's been almost 2 months. Marcus agitated. 2 months of laying low. 2 months of you saying, soon, soon. When am I getting paid? These things take time. There's paperwork. Investigations. You said this would be easy money. His voice rose. You said we'd cash out and disappear. Now the cops are asking questions about brake parts I bought online. What did you tell them? I didn't tell them anything. Stay calm. Stay calm. They showed me receipts, Margaret. Receipts with my name on them. Brake line adapters, pressure gauges. Those could be for any job. Stop lying to me. Silence. Then Vanessa, her voice sharp. Lower your voice. When are we getting the money? Where's the insurance check? It hasn't arrived yet. These things take... It's been 2 months since I cut that brake line. 2 months since I did what you asked. My heart stopped and made it look like corrosion. You promised we'd be set after the insurance came through. Shut up. Vanessa's voice was panicked now, urgent. Keep your voice down, you idiot. But it was too late. Sarah's recorder had captured everything. Marcus had just confessed to sabotaging Daniel's brakes. Vanessa hadn't denied it. She'd confirmed it by telling him to be quiet. My son's murder, recorded in pristine digital audio. I sat in that parking lot, trembling with rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. Then I forwarded the audio file to Detective Torres with a single line. Marcus Rivera just confessed to cutting my son's brake line. Full recording attached. Torres called within 20 minutes. Mrs. Hayes. His voice was different now. Sharp. Focused. Where did you get this? Private investigator. Legal surveillance. Everything documented. I need you to come to the station. Now. Bring everything you have. Everything? Bank records, emails, surveillance reports, recordings, all of it. We're reopening this as a homicide investigation. 2 hours later, I sat across from Detective Torres in an interview room, Sandra Mitchell beside me. We'd called her the moment Torres requested the meeting. Sandra presented everything chronologically. The financial fraud over 18 months, Marcus's confession on audio, surveillance of the ongoing conspiracy to defraud me, Vanessa's pressure campaign to steal my assets. Torres reviewed the audio recording 3 times, his jaw tightening with each replay. This changes everything. He looked at me, genuine regret in his eyes. Mrs. Hayes, I apologize for closing the case prematurely. I should have dug deeper. Can you act on this now? I'm reopening it as a homicide investigation immediately. Full resources. He stood, collected the evidence. I'll need to keep these originals. You have copies? Everything's backed up digitally, Sandra confirmed. Good. Torres's expression hardened into something that looked like justice preparing to strike. We're going after both of them. And Mrs. Hayes, they're not going to see it coming. I drove home in afternoon traffic, the weight of 7 weeks lifting slightly from my shoulders. Not gone. It would never be gone. But lighter. Manageable. The trap was set. The evidence was overwhelming. And soon, very soon, Vanessa would understand what it meant to underestimate a mother's love and a forensic accountant's attention to detail. When I pulled into my driveway, Vanessa was standing at the kitchen window, watching, waiting. I waved and smiled, playing the confused old woman she thought I was. She waved back, her own smile bright and false. Neither of us knew that in 72 hours, everything would change, that Detective Torres was already preparing arrest warrants, that the walls were closing in, but I suspected, and the suspicion felt like victory preparing to announce itself. I walked into my house, Daniel's house, the home where I'd raised my son, and closed the door behind me. Tomorrow, I'd play vulnerable again. I'd discuss paperwork and estate planning and all the ways Vanessa could help me simplify my life. But tonight, I'd sleep, knowing that justice was finally moving in the right direction. My son's killer had no idea the game was already over. She'd lost the moment she decided to play it. The call came at 5:47 in the morning. I was already awake, had been for hours, sitting in my darkened living room with cold coffee and Daniel's photo album open on my lap. Detective Torres's voice crackled through my phone, professional but with an edge of satisfaction I recognized. Mrs. Hayes, arrest warrants have been signed. We're executing at 6 a.m. I need you to stay home and stay safe. Both of them? Both of them. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. This ends today. I sat in that darkness for another 13 minutes, watching the clock, watching the numbers change, waiting for the moment when Vanessa's world would collapse the way mine had 8 weeks ago. At exactly 6:14, 3 unmarked police vehicles pulled up outside my house. Detective Torres emerged first, followed by 4 uniformed officers. I opened the door before they could knock. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement between 2 people who understood what justice cost. Then he called up the stairs, his voice formal and final. Vanessa Crawford, Phoenix Police. We have a warrant for your arrest. The sound of Vanessa's footsteps stopped. Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats, and in that silence, I heard everything change. Then she appeared at the top of the stairs in her bathrobe, confusion and fear warring across her face. What? There must be some mistake. Torres held up the warrant. You're being charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the death of Daniel Hayes. You have the right to remain silent. What? No, this is insane. An officer moved up the stairs. Vanessa backed away, but there was nowhere to go. They turned her around, placed handcuffs on her wrists with that distinctive metallic click that sounded like finality. Her eyes found me standing by the door. Understanding hit her like a physical blow, followed immediately by rage. You. The word came out like venom. You did this. Torres guided her down the stairs, but she twisted toward me, her carefully maintained mask shattering into 1,000 pieces. I'm your family. Daniel was my husband. My voice came out cold, steady, each word chosen with precision. Daniel was my son. and you murdered him for insurance money you'll never see." She lunged toward me, screaming, but the officers held her back. "You senile old woman, I'll destroy you. You have no idea what you're doing." Torres's voice cut through her hysteria. "Mrs. Crawford, you need to come with us, now." They led her toward the door. She was still shouting threats, promising lawsuits, calling me delusional. I watched through the window as they placed her in the back of a police car, her face contorted with fury visible through the glass. The vehicles pulled away. The house fell silent. After 8 weeks of lies and manipulation and pretending to be a confused old woman who didn't see what was happening right in front of her, Vanessa was finally gone. But the question remained, would the evidence be enough to convict her? That same afternoon, Sandra Mitchell called with news. I filed the wrongful death lawsuit, 47 pages documenting the conspiracy, financial fraud, Daniel's murder, and Vanessa's attempts to defraud you. We're seeking $2.5 million in damages. When will she receive it? Within 48 hours of making bail. The process server will deliver it personally. Sandra paused. How are you holding up? I looked around my quiet house, Daniel's house, the home where I'd raised him. I'm fine. When does the civil trial start? Probably June. We'll move faster than criminal court, and our burden of proof is lower. Preponderance of evidence, not beyond reasonable doubt. Lower burden of proof or not, I knew what this meant. Months of reliving Daniel's death in excruciating detail. Months of facing Vanessa across a courtroom. Months of wondering if justice would actually be served. But I'd come this far. I wasn't stopping now. Vanessa made bail the next day, $250,000, secured by her mother's house. She was released with GPS monitoring and restrictions against leaving Arizona. That afternoon, a process server delivered the civil lawsuit to her mother's address. According to his report, Vanessa's reaction involved thrown objects and hysterical screaming. An hour later, my phone rang. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice alternating between manufactured tears and genuine rage. How can you do this to me? I loved Daniel. I loved you like a mother. This is betrayal. You're going to regret this. I listened once, saved it as evidence, then blocked her number on Sandra's advice. Within days, Vanessa retained Bruce Kendrick, a criminal defense attorney with a reputation for aggressive tactics and winning impossible cases. His retainer was $15,000, money she scraped together by draining her remaining accounts. Kendrick immediately filed a motion to dismiss the civil case, arguing it should wait until after the criminal trial. But Sandra had anticipated this. At the hearing, she argued that civil and criminal cases were independent proceedings with different standards of proof. The judge agreed. Motion denied. The civil case would proceed, which meant Vanessa would have to fight 2 battles simultaneously, one for her freedom, one for her money. But would fighting 2 battles make her more likely to crack, or more desperate? Over the next 3 weeks, I watched from a distance as Vanessa's life unraveled. Sarah Chen continued surveillance at my request, documenting 3 meetings between Vanessa and Marcus. Their partnership was fracturing under pressure, exactly as I'd hoped. In the most heated exchange, recorded through Sarah's parabolic microphone, Marcus shouted, "You said this would be easy money. Now I'm looking at murder charges. We need to run." Vanessa slapped him. The sound cracked through the audio like a gunshot. "Running makes us look guilty. My lawyer will handle this." "Handle it? I cut the brake line on your orders." "Shut up. They're probably listening." Too late. Every word was documented, backed up, ready for court. March 25th brought the news I'd been waiting for. The insurance company sent formal notification to Vanessa. Her claim for the $500,000 death benefit was denied, pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. Arizona law prohibited beneficiaries from profiting from the insured's murder. Every financial motivation she'd had was evaporating. The insurance money, blocked. My house, protected by the pending lawsuit. Daniel's estate, frozen by probate court. She was living in Marcus's cramped apartment. GPS monitored, facing murder charges with mounting legal bills and no income. The walls were closing in. But here's what I didn't expect. Vanessa's counterattack. April 3rd. Bruce Kendrick filed a counterclaim against me in the civil case. Emotional abuse, elder manipulation, wrongful use of legal process. He sought $100,000 in damages, claiming I'd coerced Vanessa, psychologically manipulated her after Daniel's death, and was weaponizing the legal system against a grieving widow. Sandra called immediately. They're desperate. This is standard defense tactics. Attack the victim, flip the narrative. Don't worry, it's baseless. She filed a motion to dismiss within 48 hours, attaching my recordings of Vanessa's manipulation attempts, Sarah's surveillance footage, and the explicit audio of Marcus's confession. At the hearing 2 weeks later, I sat in the back of the courtroom and watched Sandra dismantle Kendrick's arguments, piece by methodical piece. She played excerpts from my recordings, Vanessa pressuring me about the house, discussing my estate with fake concern. She showed surveillance footage of Vanessa with Marcus at the motel, clearly not grieving. She referenced the audio evidence of murder conspiracy. Finally, she addressed the judge directly. Your Honor, Mrs. Crawford's countersuit claims she's a victim of Mrs. Hayes's manipulation. The evidence shows the opposite. She manipulated Mrs. Hayes, conspired to murder her son, attempted to steal her property, and is now attempting to use this court to avoid accountability. The judge's decision was swift. The countersuit is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm sanctioning Mrs. Bristow-Sono, Crawford's attorney, for filing a frivolous claim. We'd won round 2. But would winning the civil case be enough if the criminal trial went the wrong way? By late April, Marcus was crumbling. Detective Torres called with an update. Marcus Rivera contacted the DA's office. He wants to discuss his options. Translation: he wanted a plea deal. If he testifies against Vanessa, Torres explained, provides details about planning and execution, the DA might reduce charges to second-degree murder or even manslaughter. He's looking at life without parole otherwise. Will that help the civil case? Absolutely. If Marcus testifies that Vanessa orchestrated everything, paid him to sabotage the brakes, that's direct evidence. Marcus took the deal. 15 years in exchange for truthful testimony. Which meant when the civil trial began on June 1st, we had a confession waiting. The courtroom was formal, wood-paneled, American flag in the corner, the weight of justice pressing down from every surface. Vanessa sat across the aisle with Bruce Kendrick, wearing a conservative navy dress, attempting to project innocence. But her eyes remained hard, angry, unrepentant. The jury filed in, 12 citizens who would decide if Daniel's death had been murder or terrible luck. Sandra rose for her opening statement, her voice clear and unwavering. Members of the jury, the evidence will show that Vanessa Crawford and Marcus Rivera conspired to murder Daniel Hayes for financial gain. They planned it for months, purchased automotive parts to sabotage his vehicle, and timed the murder after a life insurance increase. Then they executed their plan. She paused, making eye contact with each juror. Daniel Hayes died on Interstate 10 when his brakes failed catastrophically. It wasn't an accident. It was murder. The first week established motive. Bank records showing $47,000 transferred to Marcus. The insurance policy increased just 2 months before Daniel's death. The second week presented the conspiracy itself. The emails discussing brake parts and timing, Sarah's surveillance recordings. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. July 28th, Marcus Rivera entered the courtroom in Jail Orange, shackled and defeated. For 3 hours he detailed the conspiracy, how Vanessa approached him in September, how she proposed increasing the insurance, then staging an accident, how he'd sabotaged the brakes while Vanessa distracted a neighbor. The jury watched, transfixed, and then Vanessa broke. She stood screaming, "You lying snake! You said you loved me! You said we'd be together!" The judge gavelled sharply. Kendrick tried to restrain her, but she was beyond reason. "I didn't force you to do anything. It was your idea, your plan." The judge ordered a recess. Bailiffs escorted the hysterical Vanessa from the courtroom. The jury had seen her mask completely shatter, had heard her confirm everything Marcus said. The trial was over before closing arguments even began. August 20th. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. In the matter of Hayes versus Crawford and Rivera, we find for the plaintiff. We find that defendants Vanessa Crawford and Marcus Rivera are liable for the wrongful death of Daniel Hayes. Damages, $1.8 million. I felt no triumph. Only quiet satisfaction that Daniel's death had been acknowledged, that accountability existed. The criminal plea deal came 3 days later. Given the civil verdict and Marcus's testimony, Vanessa's attorney advised her to accept 25 years without possibility of parole for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. She took it. She had no choice. August 25th, the sentencing hearing. Vanessa appeared in jail clothing, thinner and older than 2 months ago. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she read from a prepared statement. "I'm sorry for what happened. I made terrible choices." The words were hollow, coached, devoid of genuine remorse. The judge wasn't fooled. "Mrs. Crawford, you orchestrated your husband's murder for financial gain. You showed no mercy to Daniel Hayes. This court will show you none." 25 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections without possibility of parole. The gavel fell. Vanessa was led away. She didn't look at me. Marcus received 15 years the same day. He'd be nearly 60 when released. 2 days after sentencing, I drove to the cemetery. I hadn't visited since the funeral, couldn't face it during the investigation. But now, with justice delivered, I could finally say goodbye properly. Daniel's headstone was simple. Daniel Michael Hayes, 1989-2025, beloved son. I stood before it, hands in my pockets, and spoke quietly. "It's done, sweetheart. 25 years for her. 15 for Marcus. They won't profit from what they did." My voice cracked slightly. "I know it doesn't bring you back. Nothing can. But your death mattered. Justice was served." I placed my hand on the cool granite. "I love you. I always will." A breeze moved through the cemetery, rustling the leaves overhead. Time to let Daniel rest. That evening, I sat on my front porch as the sun set over Phoenix. The house was quiet. Truly quiet, without the taint of Vanessa's presence. I opened Daniel's photo album. Him as a child with a gap-toothed smile. High school graduation. College degree. Wedding day. I paused at that photo briefly, seeing Vanessa's smile now as the mask it had always been. But I moved past it to other photos. Daniel working, laughing, living the life she'd stolen. 7 months ago, I sat in this same spot after Daniel's funeral, watching Vanessa whisper with Marcus at the gate. That was the beginning. Now it was the ending. Vanessa would spend the next quarter-century in prison. Marcus as well. The conspiracy they'd built had been completely dismantled. I don't feel triumph or catharsis or closure. I feel tired. I feel older. But I also feel that I kept my promise to find the truth and make sure justice was served. Daniel's life mattered. His death had consequences, and somehow that has to be enough. If this story resonated with you, I need you to do something for me right now. First, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about justice, revenge, and standing up for the people we love. Second, tell me in the comments, have you ever had to investigate something yourself when the system failed you? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Your story matters, and I read every single comment. Margaret was 58 years old, recently widowed, and everyone expected her to be an easy target. Instead, she became a force of nature. Your story could be next. Share it in the comments below. And remember, never underestimate a mother's love. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay vigilant, stay strong, and never ever stop fighting for the truth.